I'm Richard Pyatt. Welcome to the Kindness Marketing Podcast, our very first episode of the Kindness Marketing Podcast. We're going to talk about marketing, and we're also going to talk about kindness, and together, kindness and marketing, social media, and a whole lot more. I want to introduce you to Dawn Renshaw, who's the founder of Stony Creek Social Media, who will be with us in many, if not all, of these episodes. Hello, Dawn.
Hello, Richard.
Well, we're all smiley and wide-eyed here right now because we've been talking about this for a long time, and now we're finally doing it here. The whole beginning of this Kindness Marketing Podcast, and we're going to talk about what that really means coming up in the next episode. But first, we want to take a moment to learn a little bit about you, Dawn, and what your career path has been, and social media, and all of these things that are your passion now. How did this happen?
Well, interesting enough, almost 17 years ago, I was between opportunities. It was 2009, and so we know how the economy was then. And I had started one of my many businesses. I've been a business owner of one kind or another for about 35 years. So I was doing what most considered, I guess the best way to say is a personal professional concierge. So I did, I worked in people's offices if they needed remodeling done, if they need organizing. So that's what I had started doing. And one of my clients was a website developer, and he had went to a conference and came back and was talking about the social media. And he's like, I think that you'd be perfect for it. So I started doing it, and eventually transitioned out of the concierge business and into the marketing business. And I have not looked back.
Wow. Talk about innovation and reinventing yourself and all of these things. First of all, a personal concierge sounds great.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
For those of us who would love to have one. That's right. Yeah. And you got to do a lot of different projects, I would imagine, and sink your teeth into all that.
Yeah, it was fun. And, one thing that's always been the common core in my life is helping people and making their life easier, and just overall being kind to people. I had a couple that were in their mid 80s, and so once a week I would go over and I would fix 3 meals and package them up and put them in the refrigerator. And honestly, Richard, I think I was just there for her to have someone up to talk to other than him, because I told her one time, I'm like, I can make these at my house and then bring them here. And she's like, oh, no, I really want you to do it here. So, there was just a lot of things that I did. Sometimes a client, their babysitter would cancel, or the receptionist would call in. So I'd fill in and either watch the kids, or, I'd go in and fill that receptionist. But it was just something that really spoke to my core. It was like, being there for someone on their worst day, or being able to come in, as the superhero of the day and really, save things. So it was just something that really, really resonated with me. But it was a lot of work. It was a lot of physical work. I had one house that I completely did 100% renovation. We did the landscaping. We painted every room. It took over a year. So I loved it, but it was very, very physically demanding.
It sounds like it. And when you say you did the remodeling, you mean you participated in remodeling the house?
Yes. Yeah.
It wasn't just a coordinator and a supervisor position.
Yeah. Unfortunately, one of my characters also is thinking that nobody can do it as well as I can. So, it was one of those things I was not good at delegation, but I think my employees would tell you now that I've become much better at delegating.
Figured it out. That's right. Talk about this evolution of the social media world. So it started with the realization about websites, but it's evolved since then, hasn't it?
Oh, it definitely has. I remember back in 2009, 2010, people had the option, yes, I'm going to do social media. No, I'm not going to do social media. And that has quickly pivoted to that, if you're not doing social media, it's going to be, if not impossible, nearly impossible to survive. And, like I said, so the option, when I talked about it in 2009, 2010, people are like, a lot of people didn't even know what social media was referring to. They didn't realize that it was Facebook,
Yeah.
and Twitter and, those types of things. And now it's evolved into quite a structure that people, live and die by it. You go into a restaurant, you're in a sporting event, and it's like you see people on their phone.
Boy, don't you. And it's become an extension of our lives, hasn't it? And some might say to the detriment of paying attention to everything else, but I guess that's a
Right.
whole other episode we could talk about. But
Yes.
just
Yes.
generally speaking, it is a significant part of what we do and how we gain information and how we get to know businesses and people.
Right.
And that pivot, that building, that snowballing has really happened to the extent that, as you say, if we're not doing it, do people find us? How do people find us?
Right, right. I had someone reach out to me last week and Facebook, which is, owned the parent company Meta, and they had some issues with their Facebook page and some emails had changed, on their end and just some different things. And she's like, "Well, I just think that we're gonna go away from Facebook 100%. We're just gonna find someplace else where people are." And I'm like, she was talking about a couple other, social media platforms. And I said, in 17 years, I have seen them come and I have seen them go. And as much as, our frustration level with Meta gets, super high some days, and they don't play by our rules. And, we have to play by their rules whether we like them or not. And it's still that's where people are. And well, I'll see an ad for an influencer in social media, and they'll be like, well, we're going to tell you how to trick the algorithm. And it's like, you're not going to trick it. Your best bet is to learn how to play by its rules and understand now AI is involved. But I don't suggest trying to trick the algorithms of Facebook or Meta or Instagram, any of those, TikTok, because it's better for us to learn how to navigate them and play by their rules than it is to trick them. Because once you figure out how to trick them, everything's going to change. You're going to figure out again.
Yeah, there's a whole other learning process, and that learning process doesn't end, I guess is the point. It's
No.
evolving constantly. So you're starting to get a sense here just by some of the things that Dawn has referred to that we will be talking about over the course of the next several episodes of the Kindness Marketing Podcast. Let me just ask you this. When we're talking about social media, you've mentioned Facebook and the parent company Meta. What else is social media? Is LinkedIn social media too?
Yeah, yeah, that's what early on in my agency, I've learned so many things. Sometimes it's like an agency will charge you like so much for Facebook and so much for Instagram, so much for LinkedIn, so much for TikTok, and I learned early on that that's putting a decision into the business owner's hands that they're not qualified to make. Because, anybody's like, okay, if Facebook is going to cost me, we're just going to say $100, and then Instagram is 100, and all these are 100, to save money, I might say, I only want to be on Facebook, but from an agency standpoint, that's a bad decision. So we have all of our packages include, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We can do Pinterest, LinkedIn. We have the LinkedIn personal and the LinkedIn business. And then we have, an add-on with Google. But,
Mm.
so all of those, are social media, and then there's a few new ones that have come out. The client the other day was talking about school. It's just really hard to compete with Zuckerberg, honestly.
Some
You
folks are trying, though.
Mhm. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Well, again, here's a bunch more subjects that we can expect to be talking further about over the course of the next several episodes. The other thing that we'll talk about is the whole kindness piece. But when we're talking about hiring someone like Stony Creek, like you and your staff, to do, quote unquote, do social media, we're talking about putting it in the hands of folks who've studied what those algorithms are, how to use them, and how to gain followers, engagement in a way that's probably going to be more effective than if little old Richard here does it on his own.
Definitely.
That's important, isn't it?
Definitely. And Natalie, she's my meta ad expert. I was on a meeting with her this morning with a prospective client. And, he's like, I have I have tried ads and I did this and I put this budget here and did all this stuff. And it's like I could just see Natalie, cringing inside. And it wasn't because she thought that he was stupid or he made these mistakes. It was just that we know that he wasted a lot of time and a lot of money on something that we've already tried it. We've been there, we've done that. And so we have a system where we know, like, okay, we're going to bring you in, we're going to start here and we're going to end there. But, we're going to look at the numbers, we're going to build an audience, we're going to collect data. And so when we make those decisions to spend that big money to get those conversions, we know that you have to start, in A and go through B and get to C before that's going to happen. And it goes back to the kindness part of us. It's instilled in everybody. It's one of our core values, probably the number one core value. And it's just really neat for me to see that come to fruition in my employees because, like I said, he had made these huge mistakes. We just felt bad for him that he had wasted that time and wasted that money and gotten no results.
I see this a fair amount from folks in business like you and I are. There are things we do that are the core of our business, right? And they're the basis of the expertise that we have. And there are things that are not. And
Yeah.
sometimes we say, as business owners, I'm going to take care of that myself. That's what I'm going to do. And we find out we're not experts in that. And
Right.
now, in the process of trying to do those things ourselves, we've now diverted our attention from the core of our business that we do
Right.
know, trying to
Right.
sort out things like social media and podcasts and all these things that you and I are focused on in the core of our business. So
Right.
sometimes, in the midst of saying, I don't want to spend money on that, we end up costing ourselves later, don't we?
We do, we do. And it's interesting because I've been talking about, starting this podcast for quite a while. And it's funny because I see some people, they'll cringe and are like, Dawn, you could do it yourself. And I'm like, I can't. Maybe I could do some research and spend some time and buy some equipment. But no, that's just not what I do. And I joke too, because when I was a teenage girl, my dad made me change my oil in my car, change a tire, and he got me dreadfully lost and made me find my way home. And that has come in handy many times, finding my way home, and I've had to change a tire more than once, but I can tell you I've never, ever used that skill again because it's just more convenient for me to go to the dealership and I pull in, they change it, they pull. I think it's a balancing act, that you have
Yeah.
to realize. Like, I have an accounting degree, but yet I have a CPA and a bookkeeper
How
because that's
about
just
that?
not a good use of my time.
Yeah. Yes. You have to decide where your efforts are best placed,
Right.
right? And I would suspect that social media and marketing are among those things that many business owners say, okay, I need to just put it in the hands of someone like you who knows what they're talking about and has, as you've pointed out, tested the water, studied it, know the path, and then
Yeah.
you can benefit from the knowledge of that. Well, Dawn, it's great to have met you and hopefully get folks a sense of what you're all about. And then coming up in our next episode, we're going to talk about the kindness component in all of this, the kindness marketing part of the Kindness
Sure.
Marketing Podcast. So we'll look forward to that.
Thank you, Richard.
The Kindness Marketing Podcast right here. We invite you to subscribe where you get podcasts, and you'll get an alert when these episodes come available. I'm Richard Pyatt with Dawn Renshaw. We'll be back soon.